2, 3. Hi, everybody. This presentation is going to give you the basics of submitting a simple grant application for a U.S. Embassy, U.S. Consulate, Public Affairs section, their annual program statement. That's the funding that the U.S. mission gives out to organizations from the host country and from the U.S. So this presentation was made in 2020, and it uses the real example of a notice of funding opportunity called a NOFO from the U.S. mission in Vietnam. Most of the terms and basic information here is relevant anywhere in the world, because this program statement or this NOFO is pretty much similar worldwide. It's compiled just with information to help schools and NGOs in Vietnam who are seeking funding. Okay. So I have no affiliation with the U.S. mission in any way. I have never worked there. I'm just merely sharing my own thoughts, my own speculation. This material was not reviewed in any way by anyone at the U.S. mission. It's only a learning reference. I just picked this opportunity because it's recurring every year. And so this information will be hopefully somewhat timeless. This presentation is for people who have very little experience in grant writing or proposal writing, someone who wants to start out and really doesn't know where or how to start. It's really just a point of reference. I'm not really going to get deep into pretty much anything and just share the basic mindsets of preparing the first proposal. Again, the information is intentionally out of date, that the grant was completed in 2020. And I hope that you do find it useful, especially if it's your first time. The presentation has 2 parts. The first part is for brainstorming and preparing your proposal. And the second part is just the basic mindsets and categories of budgeting. So I'll make a little pause between the 2 parts and recap what we learned in each part. So by listening to part 1, and I hope that we'll get it done within half an hour, first you'll understand the terms and the objectives in proposal writing, and what we're going to call project scoping, limiting your idea. And again, we'll understand project scoping. And finally, we'll skim through the U.S. Consulate's NOFO, or Notice of Funding Opportunity headings, and look then at a NOFO requirements matrix. This is basically just going to prepare you to understand the structure of the work you have ahead of you and the super duper most basic tools you need to manage your proposal. So if you're a real champion and you decide to go on and listen to part 2, we're going to understand this broader definition or mindset of cost-effective budget. And then we'll understand the very basic budget documents and a few details of what kind of items goes into each budget category. I'm not a budgeting expert, so we're just going to go high level through it. All right. So we begin with part 1, which is really, what am I about to get myself into? So you start by finding a NOFO, a Notice of Funding Opportunity. Sometimes these are called an RFA, or a Request for Application, or an RFP, Request for Proposal. Anything, any document that spells out the requirements of a funding opportunity is what we're looking for. And in the case of the U.S. Consulate and Embassy, which we will call the U.S. Mission, they call it a NOFO. And where do you find it? You find it on their website. And the mission of basically any country outside the US will have these opportunities on them. We also have a central platform for finding all sorts of opportunities for government funding, and that's grants.gov. This website is it's really going to be useful to you if you're trying to look globally for grants. However, it can be definitely overwhelming if you do it for the first time. There's so much to see. And so we finally find the grant on the website, we print it out, we're holding it, and now what do we do? So once you've downloaded it, you print it, you read it, God, I hope you read it, you highlighted the really important parts or the parts that were memorable to you. Now you have to come up with a plan for how you and your team are going to write your response. Writing your response, sometimes called writing a grant, writing a proposal, writing a proposal response. So we start with the super basic definitions. I assume this is your first time, and we're going to go in with what is a project. So a project is unique, and understanding what a project is helps you. It is a specific and unique new set of activities that will reach towards an objective or a goal. These activities have a logical order, and they have measurable impact at the end. Notice that it has an end, which means it has a beginning and an end. For example, if you are designing a car, that is a project because you begin designing and you end designing. But if you are manufacturing a car again and again and again for many years, that is not a project. That is operations. So a project is a unique set of activities with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Why do funders give these grants? Actually, they're hiring you to do work to produce outcomes for the mission. And of course, then what is a grant? You've heard me use the word grant. You've heard me use the word proposal. Basically, a grant and a proposal are the grant is the agreement to give your project money or resources. When we're talking about grant writing and proposal writing, we're talking about the same thing. Basically, writing a document to win business or win funding. So we talked about this. What is writing a project proposal? A project proposal is a brief document explaining the project that you are going to do, your proposed project. Now you know what your project is. Now you know how to propose that you'll do it. When do you write a project proposal? Obviously, when a funder publishes a grant or a NOFO or an RFA or an RFP, whenever someone publishes what we will call the opportunity for funding. The last question, is project proposal writing called grant writing? Yes, it is. And these two things are very similar. And what are we going to learn today to get through this? I guess we are going to create the tools you need to understand the mindset of your funder, scope your project, and lay out the requirements that you're going to fill into your proposal. So we look at the whole process, the whole thing that is ahead of us, because there is a whole lot of work ahead of you, and it's really important that you know how much work is ahead of you, so you decide, do I really want to do this? So the entire process is simple. The funder decides that they want to hire someone to do some work, and they publish an opportunity. Then your team carefully reads the opportunity. Your team writes an amazing, compliant, responsive proposal. The funder hopefully reads your proposal. Let's say you win and you get invited to an interview. An interview is a time for a co-design to really understand what are you actually going to do. This is a chance for you to negotiate a practical understanding of what's really in your project scope. And let's pray that goes well for you and you win. So those are the steps, the most basic steps. And this can take quite some time depending on your funder. So the real question is, given that there is so much time invested in this, why should you respond to a grant? With all that work that I just mentioned, you really need to ask yourself and your teammates if you really want to do this. And if you really want to win. You have to have for yourself an impassioned response to the question, why should I respond to grants? Unfortunately, if your response is money, many people say they want to write grants for money. Money is a simple and boring reason to respond to a grant. Everybody wants money. Nothing about money makes you special. Wanting money doesn't make you special. So you need to realize, do you have a genuine objective, something that you will use this money for in order to do something good? Funders will notice immediately if your motivation is to make a real impact or if your motivation is just to make money. Anyone motivated just to make money is unfortunately not going to create a sustainable product. So you should seek grants that you are passionate about, something that gives your personal or professional goals, something that helps you along the way. Again, you have to see money as just a means to an end. Money is only the bridge. The project, the objective is to move from one side of the bridge to another. This is the only way you're going to make a difference. You need to pursue the grant so that you have the tools to build that bridge. If not, you run into this circumstance where you built a bridge that just does not align. Think about money as a tool, something that you can help use to build a, okay. If you don't have the right mindset, you may end up building a very fancy bridge that is totally disconnected from making any impact, and you will create something like this meme. Fancy, something nice, but totally useless. So many people ask, why should you write grants then? For those people who are really interested in grant writing, in the pursuit of winning, they can do it for their professional growth. Through grant writing, you grow your network, you become more of a professional in your field. Hopefully, you create and sustain these very cool programs and projects that are making the world better. You, as a winning grant writer, you get some credibility. And in the case of education, you may win scholarships that can change people's life. And you can get the support you need for the supplies you need for the projects you have ongoing. I want to give a caveat that, well, I mentioned scholarships are a common motivation for grant writing. In our specific case, scholarships are not allowed. And this is just an example of the layers and layers of details that you need to become familiar with. And we are going to talk about allowed and unallowed costs a little bit later. So you can't write a grant alone. Often when it's your first time, you feel like someone told you, okay, go out there, go write a grant response, write a responsive, compliant grant. That's going to be really, really difficult for you unless you're a savant. It takes a team to do it. Of course, you want to start out with your colleagues. I'm sure your colleagues can help you. They have the same mission, but let's say that they're in different departments or they're too busy. You could find a grant writing team in the partner universities that you're going to work with or the partners that you work with. It's definitely a good idea that if you have a lot of partners, you give them an opportunity to contribute to your grant or to at least review the project before you submit it. You might find peers from other companies or around the world in your profession that can help you write a grant. You may have to start going to some networking events around your project topic area to meet the professionals that you want to meet. In this case, since I'm giving this lecture for people who are outside of the US, responding to a US grant, you definitely want to find someone with a high level of English writing and editing experience, someone who can look at what you've written with fresh eyes and kind of help make sure you don't suffer from groupthink. And of course, anyone in your community who has already won a grant or past project leader, these people are going to be super helpful for you because they know the whole process you're going through. They personally know the employees that work with the funder, and their advice will be very practical for getting things done. Okay, so let's say you decide you want to write a grant, but you don't have a project in mind. This is a big red flag. Although you can find project ideas from doing research, from your life experience, and from brainstorming with your peers, if you haven't found any projects that ignite your passion, then I recommend you don't write a grant proposal. Don't go looking for ideas. It will be a lot of work. And if you're not super motivated, you probably won't be successful. But let's say you have a project, you have an idea. Now you just need to fit your idea into the scope of the opportunity. This is called scoping. All right. So to begin narrowing your project idea, fitting your idea into the range, the scope of the opportunity, you need to ask yourself a bunch of important questions about who is going to benefit, what is the problem that people are suffering from, how are you going to solve it, how are you going to make it better for anyone. And as you go through these important scoping questions, you need to write down your answers so that you can share with all your partners and all your teammates your shared objective. If you don't have the answer for these questions totally spelled out, then you risk that your team will start working on your proposal and believe that your objective is different than what you believe it is. And then you will write a disconnected proposal. Be sure to write down the main points of your project. When you are doing this, a common scoping mistakes that people make when new to grant writing is the objective is not SMART. SMART is a mindset and that determines that the idea is thoroughly planned, achievable, measurable. You can find plenty of definitions of the SMART mindset online. Another one is people want to save the world today, but actually you need to reasonably do little by little something to improve the community around you. You can't do everything all at once. And it is totally unreasonable for you to promise that you will be able to do everything with a small budget and a short time period. So make sure that your goals are reasonable and focused. Of course, you need to make sure that the people on your team can actually complete the work that you're asking them to do. If you are writing a grant for electronic engineers, and there are no electronic engineers in your community or in your vicinity, then your grant idea does not meet your skill set, and then it is unreasonable. So make sure that you write within what you and your team can do. Often when you want to help people, you want to go above and beyond. However, you need to make sure that your idea doesn't place a real burden on people. If you're asking people to travel for your project, you need to make sure that that project and that travel isn't putting them at risk or isn't a major burden. People don't want to do something that is good for them, that inconveniences them the whole way through. Now, let's say that you want to help any group of beneficiaries, but you personally don't have any access to them. How are you going to help them? How are you going to find them? How are you going to get them to want to work with you? You need to make certain that you are writing a grant or to help a population of people that you are a part of, or that you are very, very closely linked to. And finally, of course, these are very small grants with 1 year time frames. Within 1 year, you cannot do that much. You need to write reasonable, focused objectives that you can achieve within the time frame of your grant. All right. Another aspect that we need to understand is to understand your funder. You have an idea and you have a scope. But one of the biggest parts of alignment is understanding the goals of your funder. So in order to align the scope of your project with your funder's needs, you really need to take an empathetic look at why they have this fund. Why do they have this money to give? And because our example is the US mission in Vietnam, particularly the public affairs section, I'm going to go very, very quickly through their mission and values and give you an example of trying to empathize with them. Again, I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I have never worked with them. No one there has any knowledge or put any input into this presentation. I'm only sharing these observations from searches on the internet. So we're going to go through these questions. What is their goals? What will they fund? How do they evaluate requests? And when can you attend a sharing session? It is best that if you are ever investigating any funder, you have a face-to-face or online meeting with them to get to know what their real motivations are, get to understand what is really behind their motivation. You don't want to write a grant only to find out that you didn't understand their mission or their requirements. So really go for a sharing session, go for an informational interview if you can. All right. So the public affairs section of the U.S. mission oversees public diplomacy worldwide. Public diplomacy is messaging and experience that leverage American values and culture and soft power, in a sense, to win hearts and minds in the host country. They want to create relationships that build bridges between countries and help particularly young people from those countries get to know about the U.S. Public diplomacy really depends on traditional media, people-to-people relationships, and new or social media to strengthen awareness and relationships between the U.S. and its peers. Wonderful. So if we look into that, then we realize another aspect, which is the public affairs section really values promotion on the U.S. host country relationship. They're interested in impact and communicating that impact to the public. Therefore, communication must be a big area for potential cost sharing and potential their focus. We're going to discuss this later when we look into budget and leveraging your school's video team, photography team, social media coordinators to promote your programs. Now, a good way to understand what they're really interested in is to look at their country-specific Facebook pages and see what kind of programs they have ongoing, what kind of projects they are funding. Another aspect to consider is that the American mission all around the world creates these spaces called American Hangouts or American Centers. Along with an organization, Education USA, these centers help students understand the value of a U.S. education through this network of spaces around Vietnam, actually around the world. They want to promote U.S. education, and I speculate that from their perspective, they've invested in these spaces and they would like to use them for youth programming. So consider that perspective of theirs. So we went through it. What are their goals? This is annual programming for their public diplomacy. If your project aligns with their goals and you have found common goals, also, you need to make sure that the project that you are proposing matches with your institution's goals. Because if you win this project and you go back to your boss and say, you realize your boss doesn't like it, then you have spent too much time on something, unfortunately, you can't do. But this is the kind of investigation you need to do into a funder, any funder, when you are looking for or trying to win business in any way. Because you need to be aware of misaligned goals. A big issue is that there's a mismatch between what the funder wants and what you want, or that you want something that the funder is not the most appropriate resource for. In that case, don't write a proposal. Also, if you did not read the requirements or understand the funder's mission completely, then don't write a proposal. There's this nice acronym that you can ask yourself, does my project fit, before you start planning? And when we talk about fit, you better hope that the answer to this question is a big fat yes for all of these questions. Does your idea fill their need? Can you do it? Is it feasible? It's the hack. Is this project important? Does it make a difference? If it's not important, why would we spend money? Is it testable? Are you going to be able to create measurable outcomes when your project is done? Can you prove that you did anything? Can you prove any observable change? No, I'm not sure it's great. And the last one is, if this is a short-term investment, will it have longer-term impact? Yes. If the answer isn't yes, then the money is just a short-term spend. If you don't pass the fit test, stop this video, move on with your life. But if you think that your idea does pass the fit test, then we go on. What will the US mission fund? So this is not my speculation, but looking at the NOFO, the answer is right there, because I'm focused on education. I found right in here, priority program objectives and target audience, education. So we see it's not everything in education. It's basically around teaching and STEM. Looking there carefully, it's around teaching methods, curriculum development, English, and STEM. It's not about grants or research. That's a big one. If you are looking for this for a research grant, nope, this is the wrong funder for you. Do not continue. It's important. Education. You may think broadly, this is an area for me to do my research. Nope, this is for programming for young people. Another one is the target audience. Anywhere in the world, they're looking to impact young people. Probably young people, because young people have open hearts, open minds. They can take in the awareness of the US and they can benefit them. A lot of schools look at this and they think, oh, I run an elementary school. This is perfect. I want to do a STEM program for my elementary school. Actually realize that 15 to 35 is high school through early adulthood. So if you have children or older adults in mind for your project, this is not the right grant for you. There may be many others. Also, you need to notice the geographic priority, the specific provinces. It depends on where you live or where your project is going to run, not where you live. The most important question, I know I'm hammering on this, is what will they not fund? Here, we have to look through this long list, long list of things that they are not going to fund. You can read through it, but related to education, they're not funding construction projects. They're not building new classrooms. Scholarships, they are not funding scholarships for students to take on any other education opportunities. Cash prizes for competitions. Nope. You may want to run a hackathon, but you cannot charge any prize money to this grant. And networking events. There's a big benefit in networking events in education, but this is not an opportunity for those. So make sure that you are proposing a project that perfectly fits this. And who will they fund? This is important. Before you make the decision to write your proposal, this is called the bid decision. You have to go through all this other criteria and make sure that your project fits. Now the question is, do you fit? If you look, you will realize the funder is not giving projects to any for-profit institutions. And it's important that you notice your organization meets the criteria for being a not-for-profit, non-government organization or a public educational institution. All right, so your idea fits. Now I must submit. When you're submitting, you're going to write and submit what's called your submission package. In this case, the package is very brief. It is all upfront, everything that you must submit. More or less, it has three main parts: the proposal, the grant, the bid, and the mandatory forms, US government registration numbers that come with those forms. And finally, your budget justification and narrative. Within your proposal follows a template that can be found within the notice of opportunity, and it has these basic sections. And we won't have time to get into how to write these sections. That is definitely an area of technical writing, but we can go through them quickly. There's the executive summary, which you write at the end, and it summarizes everything: your problem, your intervention, your expected impact. Then you have the program or project description, which summarizes what you're going to do and how things are going to change. The monitoring and reporting section, which explains how you will prove that any change has actually occurred. The personnel section, this is where you prove that you and your team have the skills, time, and capacity to get it done. And of course, the budget, which is all about the money, and we're going to look at that specifically. So actually, there are tons and tons and tons of little requirements hidden in the notice of funding opportunity. This is the hard part. You need to strictly follow all of the NOFOs requirements, including the application deadline, the section headers, the document formatting, the page numbering, the required registrations, and the email submission process, and much more. These requirements are written all throughout, almost hidden inside of the notice, to make sure that you're paying attention. It's best practice that a proposal manager makes something like this: a requirements matrix, which has first the NOFO page number of the requirement in green, then in orange, the page in the proposal where that requirement is filled. Purple is the actual text of the requirement. Blue, who is accountable to make sure that that actually happens. And red, the due date for fulfilling that requirement, which is usually always the last day of the proposal, but if you're doing it right, you will have set it up into different phases. And finally, the status, if that requirement is filled, and gray, any links that will help you better fulfill the requirement. As the proposal manager, it's important that you make a requirements matrix, you follow it, and that you don't miss any details. All right. So a quick review of some of the terms that you're going to see in your proposal template. The project M&E plan, it's a technical writing section that explains the expected outcomes and how to measure these outcomes and your measuring tools. The budget narrative, this is a technically written section about your project's costs. The personnel, these are the expertise and experience of your team. The project summary is a clear and complete vision of the entire project. It is written in a few paragraphs for those who don't have time to read your entire proposal, and you write it last. You write it when your idea is totally complete, not in the beginning. The problem statement, the problem statement explains the problem, the context, the background, the current solution, and the research that proves that your beneficiaries need your project, will need your intervention. Of course, the beneficiaries, those who will directly and indirectly be impacted by your project positively. I know I went a little out of order, but those are some of the most basic terms. So now we're going to look back at what we covered in part one. Congratulations, you listened to all of part one. Woo! So I hope that I gave you a quick review and a simple understanding of the motivations of a grant funder and project scoping. And I gave you a simple look at the motivations of the US mission. We discussed very quickly the requirements matrix and the most basic sections and terms of your proposal. This is the end of part one. You're doing a great job. I know I'm talking fast, but I'm going to see you in part two. It's going to be awesome.